Welcome to another session of our Level Up series. I hope all of you can hear me. If you can hear the text in the chat box, you can also use the reaction button. I am Nin Washira, your host for today. I'm so excited to have you here for the Global Citizenship Foundation Capacity Building Session tagged the Level Up series. Today, we'll be diving into practical strategies for managing stress and building resilience. Please take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat box. Let us know your name and where you're joining from. Thank you for being here. Commitment to growth and professional development is truly inspiring. In today's session, we'll share insights, experiences to help you sharpen your skills, boost your confidence, and take your career to the next level. Get ready for an engaging and an interactive experience. Once again, we like to see you introducing yourselves by stating what your name is and where you're joining from in the chat box. All right. Okay. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's expert speaker, Lindsay Kitchen. We are going to give a short description, about Lindsay and hand it over to her to start the presentation. I hope Lindsay can hear me. And just give me a thumbs up. Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, Lindsay Kitchen is a highly skilled ICF PCC coach, speaker, and facilitator known for designing and delivering transformative leadership development programs that produce tangible and measurable results. With over 20 years of experience in leadership and management within the utilities sector, Lindsay's expertise spans across corporate property, communications, change management, and business strategy. As co-founder of Cape People Development, she partners founders, business owners, and leaders to provide practical, outcome-driven solutions that address their most pressing challenges. A deep understanding of the balance between scaling businesses and keeping engaged, Lindsay's guidance ensures sustainable growth without losing what makes an organization unique. Outside of her work, Lindsay is active on the sidelines of a football pitch, cheering for her two daughters, pushing her fitness limits with running and boot camps, and vice chair of governors at her local school. With that, let's give a warm welcome to Lindsay Kitchen. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction. And it is my pleasure to be here with you all today. And what I'm hoping I can provide you with is a little bit of calm, a little bit of an oasis in what I imagine might have been a very busy week for you all, and maybe still a very busy day. It is Friday. Yes, we are at the end of the week. So I'm just going to help you create a little bit of time and space to think about you and to think about how you can boost your well-being, build your resilience, and be able to manage all those challenges that might come your way. So this is, we're together for 2 hours, but I really want you to come away with some practical things that you can do. So the first thing is to check that you have something next to you that you can write down some thoughts with. So a paper and a pen or a notebook, or maybe your tablet or phone, however you want to capture some notes from today. And I want you to do a bit of work. So as well as this being, this nice little calm moment, I want you to do some thinking. So I'm going to ask you some questions as we go throughout this session too. And as Lynn said, we'd love you to engage with us and use the chat to share your thoughts and comments. Also, we would love you to use your reaction buttons, as some of you have been already. So test out those emojis and let us know what's really, you're connecting with, what's really making sense. We have got time for some questions afterwards, but there is also a Q&A function here. So if you want to ask a question, you can put it in there. Or if you are feeling brave and you'd like to come and actually come off camera and come off mute and share something, we would love that too as well. So if you're able to as well, it would be lovely to see your faces. So if you feel comfortable and you're happy to put your camera on, it always helps us support each other and our learning and see who's engaging. And for me as a facilitator as well, it really helps me to check that what I'm sharing is making sense and that everybody is, finding it useful. So please do, if you're able to, please show who you are as well. So first of all, as Lynn did in her introduction, I've been working in, I've been working in general, I guess, for about 30 years. And the first 20 of those years, I worked in corporate roles. So I started my career, as many people do, not knowing what I wanted to do. I ended up falling into property. And so I was lucky that my company sponsored me to train as a surveyor. And very quickly, I worked out it was the people side of work that I loved best. It was helping to develop people, helping people to move through change, helping to really engage people in the work that they were doing. And I guess you could say I'd always had a coaching approach. So I preferred to ask people questions than tell them what to do. I preferred to get them to do the thinking. And so I had an opportunity in 2018 to leave those corporate roles and to move more into consultancy. And I retrained as a professional leadership coach. I also studied organisational leadership at Oxford as a postgraduate because I wanted to get some of the theory that went alongside what I'd seen in practice for 20 years. And that then led me to set up CAPE about 4 or 5 years ago with my colleague and my co-founder, Naomi. And what you see on the screen there is #WearYourCape, because the name CAPE came from where we were interviewing lots of people out in the world of work and asking them at the point of when they became a manager, when they became a leader, how did it feel? And one of those people said, it feels like I have to put on my cape. It feels like one day I'm just doing my work, doing my job, and it's all fine. And the next day, I have to be this superhuman person that knows everything, can do everything, that my team come to for all the solutions. And it feels like I need this cape. And that's where our name came from. So we are Cape People Development, and we work with leaders around the world. This morning, I've just been on a call with people from infrastructure that's a global business. And I had somebody from India, somebody from China, somebody from Europe, because actually what really connects us all is that people focus, isn't it? And a big part of how we not only look after ourselves, but how we look after the people we work with is when we think about our resilience, and we think about our ability to adapt and stay strong and stay happy during all of the challenges that we might experience from the world of work. So, first of all, let's just hear some statistics out there. So in a recent Deloitte survey, so Deloitte are this global consulting firm that do lots of research. They found from their research that 68% of C-suite, so that's the most senior leaders, your chief execs, your COOs, admitted that they are not taking sufficient action to safeguard employee and stakeholder health. So they recognise there's a gap in the action that they're taking as organisations. And then Alflac recently shared that only 54% of employees felt their employer cared about their mental health. So that's nearly half of us think that our work, our bosses, the people around us don't care enough. That's significant, isn't it? When we think about that as a statistic, we've got this huge gap here. And 38% of people have reported high stress at work. That's an increase in 5%, according to this study by Alflac. So we know that chronic stress drains workplace productivity. We see these things happening around us, such as sickness, absenteeism, or people feeling like they need to be present and showing up and being there, but not actually doing the work. We see people that might be leaving. And so there's a huge cost in when people leave our businesses and the places we work. And so this is a business problem. People sometimes think this is a HR problem, a people problem. It's not, it's a business problem. And also, we're not then thinking about the impact on us socially, the impact on our lives, our families, and the impact upon the role that we play in our communities when our well-being is not supported. And so I'm really pleased to be here today to actually share with you from our research, from our experience, what we found actually supports people to develop that resilience and be able to look after their own well-being and the well-being of the people that they work with. So actually, before I go on to that, I want to get a sense of how you're feeling today. So if you were to describe how you are feeling as the weather, what would you say? Would you say it's sunny, everything's great, you know, there's blue skies? Would you say it's a bit windy because there's things that are happening that are knocking you off balance? Or maybe there are thunderstorms. Maybe there's something dark coming overhead. So just put in the chat, if you were to describe how you're feeling today as the weather, what would it be? So thank you for those coming through. We've got a few gloomies, some sunnies, got some grey and some miserable thunderstorms. I'm sorry to hear that, Ruxana. Yeah, this is how the weather, you know, using the weather is a great metaphor for how we might be feeling. Some of us are sunny and beachy, a little bit of wind coming in. So yeah, we're all arriving here differently because we've got different things going on. Oh, I love the emoji of the hurricane. Brilliant. And this is it, isn't it? At any day, we can be feeling differently. Things can impact us, things can help us. And we don't truly know how other people are thinking and feeling unless we ask them. And especially in this digital world where we might not be sat next to somebody where we can get a sense of how are they doing? Because I can see you maybe are struggling a little. So let's hold that in our mind as we go through today. However you're feeling and thinking about how your people here might be, your fellow participants might be thinking and feeling too. So what do we hope that you will achieve through spending some time with us today? Well, first of all, we want you to really get a sense of knowing what resilience is. It's a word we use a lot, but actually, what does it mean? What is it in practice? And we also want you to think about what really matters when building and maintaining resilience. What really matters? And then I'm going to share with you some strategies or some techniques that we can use, not only just when we are under pressure, but all the time to help us keep that resilience and keep ourselves healthy. And I'm going to help you work through something that we call a resilience template. And I want you to leave here today with having your own resilience template to take forward. So hopefully that's what everybody signed up for. You've not joined the wrong webinar. As I said, we'd love you to, as we go through, put questions in the Q&A or put in the chat what you connect with that we're sharing here. And, I'm a big believer in having some fun, bringing some light to what sometimes can be some of these difficult subjects. So let's do some of that too. Okay. So let's start with that being really clear on what resilience is. So who wants to have a go at putting in the chat a definition of resilience? Just share in a couple of words what you think resilience is, what it means. Have a go. Let's see what people share. Yeah, your ability to bounce back from a setback. That's quite a common phrase, isn't it, that we use, bouncing back in terms of resilience. Yeah, strength to endure and bounce back. What else do people think? If you agree with what the person's put in the chat, give them a thumbs up so that see, yeah, we've got bouncing back again. Process of enabling and accessing appropriate resources to recover and grow from severe adversity. That is very comprehensive. Great definition there. Yeah, so we've got some concept of what resilience means already and how maybe we've talked about it. The ability to adapt and grow. Yeah, it's all about this adapting, isn't it? I love that word. And what you'll see here is a picture of a suspension bridge. And this is how, if you're a visual thinker, I'm a real visual thinker. I like to use pictures. I might describe stuff with my hands as well. And this is how I think about resilience, in it being a bridge that actually is flexible. It's adaptable, it moves, rather than a rigid, structure that actually is fixed. And when it has a load on it, it can crack, it can break. Actually, what we're talking about here in resilience is that we can flex. And I want to provide you an alternative to the bouncing back approach, in that if we've got really strong resilience, it will help us from falling over in the first place. Or maybe we'll just fall slightly, we won't completely fall over. That's it, we bend, not break. So when we think about resilience, how can it be not just about us bouncing back, but actually to help us not fall down in the first place? And when we think about it as a definition, and many of you have captured these words in the chat, it's the capacity to remain flexible in our thoughts, our feelings and behaviours. And as a number of you said, this is because of adversity. Excuse me. This is because of disruption, extended periods of pressure and challenges, so that we can emerge stronger, wiser and more able. So we learn from our setbacks, don't we? We learn and we grow, as many of you said. in the chat. It's about growth. And Carol Pemberton, Dr. Carol Pemberton, is a great writer on resilience. And if you are looking at further reading, then I'd encourage you to look at some of her work. So let's dig deeper then into what it is and what it isn't. So it is your ability to be flexible and adapt, your ability to learn from experiences and to have that growth mindset, your ability to respond to setbacks, your ability to know and draw on your own resources. And it's how you respond and recharge. And encouragingly, it's something that can be developed. And this is really important because you might hear people say, or maybe you might say yourself, I'm just not a resilient person. It's just not in my nature. You can be resilient. It is a muscle that you can, like any muscle, you can work, you can strengthen, you can grow, and you can develop. So this is possible for all of us. And actually, by developing it, you can future-proof your well-being too. And we'll talk about the link between resilience and well-being. So what it isn't a guaranteed armor of protection, unfortunately. So there will be things that impact us and affect us. It doesn't stop everything from coming through. And in this crazy world we live in, who knows what's coming through? This is the challenge, isn't it? It isn't the ability to have a life free of stress and disruption and challenge. Those things will still exist, but our response to them will be much more significant. And as I said before, this isn't about bouncing back. It's about that ability to not completely fall over in the first place. And it's not, this one's an interesting one. This isn't a demonstration of how able you are. So by that, I mean that, you know, some people might wear it as a badge that I can put up with anything. I can tolerate anything. And I will, you know, I will work all the hours and I will never sleep and I will put myself into serious positions all the time. That isn't what having resilience is about. This isn't a demonstration of how able we are or how long you can endure something. And as I said before, it's not a fixed trait. So I would like you to think about now, on a scale of 0 to 10, how resilient do you think you are, or what level of resilience do you think you have? And if you want to, you can put this in the chat, that number, or if you don't, just capture it for yourself somewhere. If 0 is not resilient at all and 10 is having great resilience, what number would you say you're at? And it might change depending what's going on in your life, what's been happening. I can certainly say for myself, I probably had a period about 6 years ago when my resilience was really low and I hadn't invested the time in it and the focus. And so when I had quite a lot of challenges about 5, 6 years ago, my well-being really suffered. So yeah, we've got a mixture coming through there, haven't we? 6s, 7s, got some a little bit lower, some a little bit higher. Yeah. And it'll be great to hear from some of you as we go through this on your tips and tricks too, because that's what this community is about. It's sharing with each other. So when I invite you to talk about what you've done that have helped you to build your resilience, then we would love to know that. Yeah, resilience will vary, definitely. So let's think about then the link between resilience and well-being. And so Mind, which is a mental health charity, say that taking steps to look after your well-being can help you deal with pressure and reduce the impact that stress has on your life. This is sometimes called developing emotional resilience. So people can manage their well-being by building their resilience. And we will think about well-being in a moment of what that actually means. But there is this strong correlation here. So the majority of individuals who report high well-being and high resilience connect. And then people that report low well-being often have low resilience. There's that connection there, which is unsurprising, really, isn't it? There's an overlap in the variables that contribute to well-being and resilience. So there's analysis out there that says that how we feel about our lives today can help us build up the resources to weather the storm tomorrow. And I used this phrase before, the fixed mindset or the growth mindset. So our growth mindset is very much about we have potential. And if there's something we can't do, somebody with a fixed mindset might say, I can't do this. Somebody with a growth mindset might say, I can't do this yet, but I'm going to try. I'm going to learn. And that's where our resilience can come into this, because it's the story we tell ourselves. It contributes to how we feel about our lives and how we are able to feel and cope with things that come at us that might not be the great things in our life, the crisis. So our capacity for change, our capacity to handle uncertainty, that is really impacted by the resilience and also then connected to having that growth mindset. Think back to that suspension bridge. Think back to that moving and bending and that flexibility and adapting. Seeing things from a different perspective, taking a different view, changing the way that we maybe approach something. So now let's explore well-being then. We use this phrase a lot, don't we? Again, our well-being, my well-being's good, my well-being's not so good. But what does well-being actually impact on? What are we talking about as a whole when we think about well-being? Again, just put in the chat. What comes to mind for you when I say that word, well-being? What does it impact on? I'm interested in your thoughts. What do we think? Oh, energy, a state of wholeness, love that. Intentional self-care, regardless of the circumstances. Yeah. Your overall health, health in mind, body, and spirit. Yeah, lovely way of bringing it together there. What else? What else do we think our well-being impacts on? Got a good list there. Yeah, to be ourselves in a psychologically safe environment. Yeah, that we can feel at ease, be natural, have balance in various fields, peace of mind. Yeah, lack of abnormal disease, more empathy towards yourself, lack of happy. Love it. I love all of these coming through. You're on fire today for a Friday. This is brilliant. A state of strong attachment to self-balance and confidence. Yeah, being happy and balanced. These are all great ways of capturing actually what our well-being is and what it impacts on. And it makes my slide now look a little bit, unsuperior to what you've put there. I'm going to steal some of those phrases. They're brilliant. So, well-being sits in the center of how we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem. That you've captured that beautifully with some of the words that you've shared there. Our energy, how we can show up. I was in a room yesterday with a group of leaders, and the energy was just like you could sense it. And I was co-delivering with Naomi, who's my co-founder of this, and we're like, gosh, we can see this in the room. What can we do to help people rebuild that energy? And we were like, we might need to have more breaks in today. We might need to get them standing on their feet a bit more. We might need to get them to, take a different approach because actually their energy in the room is quite low. It impacts on our physical health. So actually, how our immune system, and are we getting colds and flu more? Are we getting things that show that we're feeling run down? If one of the team can just have a check on, there's somebody that shared that they can't see the presentation. So Lynn, if you could help them with that, that would be fantastic. Thank you. And also our productivity. So we know that if we're not feeling great, we're not good at getting stuff done. We might want to just, sit and actually get under the duvet and not be proactive. We might just want to watch too much Netflix. But when we're feeling in the zone, we're getting loads of stuff done. We've got that positive mindset. And this is really important. It's about helping our creativity. So quite often we are asked to think differently. We are asked to come up with new ideas. We are asked to innovate. And if we don't have great well-being and great energy, that's really hard to do. Our brain cannot think in a creative way if we are stressed. So the functioning parts of the brain that we need to have creativity are impacted by the hormones and our stress response. And literally, we maybe really struggle to think creatively, think strategically when we're under stress. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And also, this is about how others see us and perceive us. Are they seeing the best version of us if our well-being is not supported, is not feeling great? And that all comes back to building that resilience again. All makes sense. This is a model, a visual that can help us think about our well-being. And sometimes people talk about buckets. You might have heard that term, that analogy used. This one is the reservoir of well-being. And so it can be a useful image to hold on to. We can think about our physical and our emotional well-being like the water in a reservoir. It's constantly being drained and topped up in different ways. And there are things that can create a drain or a crack in the reservoir. And it's actually, probably not possible to create a system where there are no drains at all, because that's life. So there's going to be things that create these small drains. But actually what we can do is to think about the ways that we can top up the amount of water, what can refill our reservoir, and ways to minimize the significance or the exposure to some of the drains. So we can think about the sources that help us to top up. And this might be different to you than it is for me. And this is what we're going to come on to a little bit later when we think about your own resilience template, but some examples here that are helpful. Physical exercise, sleep. I know that if I haven't exercised, then I start to feel like I'm not looking after myself. I start to seize up physically, but also mentally. I try and go for a walk every day, no matter what. And I try and do something a bit more physical a few times a week. And that really helps me. We've also got reframing our thinking can help us top up our reservoir, thinking about it with this growth mindset, thinking about it in a different way. Actually having challenging and achievable goals help us top up that reservoir. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? What's the gap? How am I working on that? What are the steps that I know mean that I'm getting there? That gives us motivation, that gives us a sense of purpose, and that can really fill up our reservoir. Mastering new skills, learning really helps us and our well-being. And we know that when we're not feeling personal growth, that can impact our well-being. And hugely important, hugely significant is connection with others, social support. We know that as humans, We need social connection almost as much as we need food. It is another type of fuel, isn't it? It's important to us. And loneliness is one of the most significant challenges, especially for people in our older generations that might not have family. We think about actually how connecting with others can top up that reservoir. And then, we know that uncertainty and change and threat is out there. It is a real life drain or crack in our reservoir, but how can we minimize the impact of it? In the same way as workload or work-life balance, we have lots of different roles in our life at work and outside of work. We might also have distortions in our thinking, and I'm going to come on and talk about those a little bit more, but we might not see things in a real way. And we could have challenging relationships around us. Could be, again, in the world of work or outside of work. So this might be, a way of thinking about, are you keeping topped up your reservoir? And are you identifying the things that might be drained? So staying tuned in or attuned can help us. And often it's other people that might notice these things before we do ourselves. So you might have had a friend or a colleague or a family member say to you, "Are you okay? You seem to be, holding the world on your shoulders. Maybe, you're hunched over and you're carrying a load physically, mentally." But there's some things that we can do to check in on our own, how we feel in our body, how our emotions are, what our behaviour's doing, and actually what's going on in our brain. So I'm going to think about an example for me, and I'd like you to think about an example for you of how you know that your well-being might be being impacted. So for me, I hold a lot of my tension and stress in my jaw. So I guess I end up doing this a bit. And I didn't know how much at one point I was holding that until I went to the dentist and I had opened my mouth for them to look inside. And actually what happened was it really hurt and it was really stiff. And so I could see then that I was holding all of this tension in my jaw. I could see then that actually I was more stressed than what I thought I was. So that enabled me to think about, what am I doing? What am I not doing? What might be causing this? So for you, just put into the chat what tells you that you might be feeling stressed, that your well-being might be impacted. So just put into the chat, how do you notice what's going on in your body or your emotions or behavior that tell you that your well-being might be being impacted? What do other people notice in you? So yeah, chest pains, we can feel it here, can't we, in our heart? Headaches, low mood, we might not think straight. Yeah, I literally cannot think about this. I literally cannot, because I'm so, can feel it there. Migraines, irritation, yeah, sleep, lethargic. Yeah, emotions are low, we just want to be alone. Anxiety. So all these are signs that actually our well-being is struggling. And, sometimes my kids say to me, "Mom, what's going on? You're not concentrating. I'm trying to talk to you and you're not listening because I'm so overwhelmed and distracted." So sometimes it is, the people around us that point this out too. These are real signs that we can, notice and not ignore and listen to and think about, okay, what's going on here? So in this list, we have in our body, and as some of you mentioned, these could be our breathing. We're not actually taking time to stop and breathe. Just that. Sometimes when people join one of my coaching sessions, if it's a one-to-one, they're really busy, they've landed and they've sat down on Zoom or in real life and they've gone, "Oh God, la, 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 la." And I'm like, right, take a breath. Before we get into what we're going to do now, let's just settle, take 2 deep breaths. People might get asthma actually from, as a side effect of these symptoms of the well-being struggling. Many people have shared their headaches, migraines, digestive problems. Our gut actually is a symptom of stress when our gut, something's going on. So, we talk about gut instinct, but actually listening to our gut in terms of how are we feeling? When we're tense, sometimes we can have stomach cramps and we can feel ill. Cold hands and feet, our blood's not flowing in a way it should be. Palpitations, tiredness, aches. And then emotions, as some of you have said, our temper, our irritation, intolerance, nervousness, anxiousness, self-doubt, depression, outbursts. So, losing things a lot quicker in terms of our temper. I'm a really calm person, but when I'm stressed and I have a spike, that takes people by surprise because that's not normally me. And I don't want to do that, but sometimes I can't help it. So what can we do to notice when we're going to get there and stop it before we do? And our behaviours. So a few of you said here, loss of sleep, but we might start making errors. We might start being, carelessness, increased drinking and smoking, or support mechanisms that might not be the healthiest. Withdrawal, a few people said, we step back, lack of commitment and follow through and energy and enthusiasm, avoiding situations and procrastination, that word, putting things off, stopping doing things. And in our brain, what this manifests as is that we can't make decisions. We struggle. We have poor judgment. We forget things. We make mistakes. And we have lack of attention to detail. So just take a minute while I just grab a quick drink as well. Just think about, for you, what shows up here. And maybe if you've got that pen and paper handy, just write down something that you want to be aware of that maybe wasn't obvious in terms of what your body or what your emotions are telling you when your well-being isn't where it needs to be. There might be things that are really obvious to you, but now looking at this list, is there something else that tells you that your well-being isn't where you need it to be? So why is this important in our world of work? If you are an individual at work, an individual contributor, or if you are a manager that are leading others, it's critical that you pay attention to your well-being. And actually, for managers, for leaders, it's this whole analogy of putting our own oxygen mask on first before we help others. As a manager, as a leader, if you are one, and feel free to jump in the chat again and say, if you are in a role where you're leading others, where you're managing others, because sometimes we can feel like we need to put everybody else first. We can look after everybody else's well-being before our own, and then we struggle and we don't have the energy. So this is about thinking about how you prioritize and think about your own well-being and how you support others. So why is this important? So that you can look after yourself and that you can co-create a healthy environment for your team. And, no matter what your role in the work that you do, you can do that. You can support your colleagues. You do play a pivotal role in your colleagues' professional lives, but then also in your overall lives. There's a statistic out there that we spend on average 80,000 hours at work over our lifetime. 80,000 hours! That is huge, isn't it? And if we're not thinking about our well-being at work and then also supporting our fellow colleagues, there's a challenge. And that's where it goes back to those statistics I shared at the start of the session, in that, actually we need to be doing more about this at the world of work. People are starting, there are more conversations happening, but it needs to be more than just a stress awareness day once a year. It needs to be more than just a basket of fruit once a month in a location. We've got to actually embed this in the way that we organize our work, that we delegate our work, that we set up our projects. It has to be integrated for there to be the shift in our well-being as a whole global population. So you have a key role to play, whether you're a manager or not. And it's all about role modeling as well. How you're role modeling this, because even if you're a manager that says, or you're a team member that says to your colleague, you should have a break, you keep eating your lunch while you're still working, but then you don't have a break, what are they going to do? Because you're role modeling something that actually is what you do rather than what you say you do that's important. So what do you do to look after your own well-being? Let's just hear from some of you in the chat again. What do you do that keeps your well-being and keeps your reservoir topped up? What are you doing? Let's hear from some of you. Going for a walk, yeah. Yeah, I like to. There's actually a reservoir near me, which is where I go and have my walk, because having a walk, going around water, just seems to calm me and seems to help me sort of settle. Music, yeah, and podcasts. Music's a great way of topping up our reserves. Time in nature, I'm with you there, yeah. Listen to music. Yoga every morning, yeah. That movement, the breathing, the intentional aspect of it. Sleep, meditation, binge on good movies. Right, what's a great movie as well? Like, put in your recommendations. What's a great podcast? What's a great, music to listen to? What gets you your well-being there? Is it something that energizes you, that gives you a feel good? Is it something more calm? Yoga, meditation, yeah. All these things are really important. Doing something creative. I've got a friend who crochets, sort of like knitting, but not knitting. And, that whole aspect of the rhythm of it and focusing in. Creativity creative projects can be really good. Yeah, taking a break. I love all of those. Friends, coffee dates. Brilliant. And I guess the challenge is when we're busy, when we're stressed, what's the first thing that we tend to stop doing? I know when I'm really busy and stressed, I might not see my friends as often as what I should do. I might not go to those exercise classes because maybe I'm just feeling I haven't got the time. And this is the challenge, isn't it? That we need to be doing this consistently and without excuse, even when those excuses seem to be really persuasive. Yeah, your social life drops. Like I was saying to a friend the other day, like, I don't feel like I've seen you for ages. How are things going? And she said, you know what, I've got so much going on. I've just withdrawn in and I was like, would it be helpful to have a chat? And she was like, do you know what, actually it really would. And sometimes that's it, isn't it? It's like that chat with that person can do us much more benefit than withdrawing in. So yeah, think about all of those strategies that you have in place. When's the time when you might actually withdraw and not do that? And then if you're working with your team or colleagues, what are you doing to support them as well? Just pop that in the chat if there's something somebody does for you that supports you at work, or what does your manager do that's great, or what do you do? I'd love to see some of those in there as well. So I know like somebody that I used to work with would always get us to go out for a walk, to have a chat for a meeting, rather than just doing a meeting at a desk or in an office or in a building. So So think about what others are doing for you as well. There's a great question that's come in there as well in the chat. And if anybody would like to provide a response to Jan on that too, have a think about that question that's been posed there. And this is another way of just thinking about it. If you were to give yourself the advice that you might give to somebody else, what more could you do? So if you were talking to a friend, thinking about your own position, what would that friend advise you to do? This is often a great way of thinking about it, because that friend would probably tell you to be kinder, to create more boundaries, to not say no to seeing that friend, to go along with it. So there's some great ways of thinking about this. So let's dive in now deeper into what actually matters in terms of building that resilience. And I'm going to share with you some strategies that you might have come across before. So it might be a reminder, or it might be something new, but it's things that you can put in place and do to help you build that resilience. So the first one is around thoughts and distortion. So we mentioned this a little bit before. But one important factor in relation to our resilience is how we view the world. What lens are we looking through? And what thoughts are we having about that? So our well-being and our resilience is linked to flexibility and thinking. We know that now. It's about that ability to adapt. But because of how our brains are wired, it's common that when we are having something that's difficult or challenging, our thoughts might become distorted. And this impacts how we feel about ourselves and our emotions. And emotions are a precursor to action. So that impacts then the choices we make and the things we do or don't do. And that in turn then leads to the level of pressure we feel and our capacity in relation to that impact, and then in turn our well-being. So let's think about that in a practical sense. Let's bring it to life. So maybe I've been put on the spot and I've been asked to do a presentation in a meeting that I wasn't expecting to do. And I suddenly go, whoa, maybe I'm not comfortable with doing presentations, or even maybe if I am, being put on the spot would make me feel like, gosh, I'm not prepared. So our brain will try and protect us in that moment because they'll perceive a threat. And we start to have a physical response to that threat as well. We might get sweaty palms, our throat and our mouth might go dry. Some people, when they're stressed, sometimes get a rash on their neck, or other things happen. Our body has a response and we release a stress hormone, which could be adrenaline or cortisol. And those hormones are creating this physical change, but they're also telling our brain, this is a situation here, you need to protect yourself. And so in that moment, and you've probably heard of that fight or flight or flop and freeze response, if our emotions and our thoughts take over us, we might just go, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. We might, worst case, we could get up and leave the room or switch the off button on Teams. We might go, no, because our brain has gone into its primitive state of trying to protect us. But actually, that's a thought distortion for many of us, because what's the worst that can happen if we step up and present? People might say, do you know what, I say something wrong, I don't say anything at all, people could laugh at me, I could end up humiliating myself. And the reality is, it's probably very unlikely that any of those things have happened to you. But your brain is looking for evidence of the danger. And so it's over exaggerating and distorting your thoughts here. So that would create this feeling of danger, of I don't want to do it. So we'd get anxious, we'd get nervous. We have these, physical challenges that would happen as well. And so our reality is not real. That view of the world is not grounded on evidence. So this is the thought cycle that's going on at any one time. We have a thought, it gives us a feeling that impacts our behavior and our actions, and then that's the results that we get. And this cycle is going on in your mind in the background all the time. And sometimes we become aware of it. And this is where, when we are thinking about building our resilience and thinking about things in a different way, by raising our awareness and challenging our thoughts, we can then change our feeling and change our behavior. So what's really important here is that this isn't about having negative thoughts, because we always will. And those negative thoughts are useful sometimes to inform us and tell us where there is risk and danger and where we might need to think about our choices and our options. And almost like when we are meditating, we're always going to have things coming into our mind, but we have to choose what we listen to and choose what we let go of. So it's to bring more balance into our thinking, more choice, and the options available to us, and then the actions we take. So how would we go about this? As I said, it's raising awareness, first of all. It's thinking about thinking patterns. And what we're not saying here is that you can change this overnight. Thinking patterns are deeply embedded for us, and our experiences have shaped those thinking patterns. So to make a shift and make a change, it's baby steps, small changes at first that can make a difference. So noticing, what thought am I having here? And almost being curious about that thought and gently challenging it. Consider an alternative or reframing it, or think about what somebody else would say to you, or you would say to somebody else if they had that thought. And then what's really important here is to look for the evidence to support your thinking. Our brains make assumptions all the time. It's how we operate in the way that we do. Micro decisions are happening based upon assumptions. That enables us to do everything we do in our life. But what we're not always doing there is our computer and our brain is not always selecting the right balance of information. So when we are using that presenting example in a meeting or in a situation, when that happens, our brain is just making a list of all the things that could go wrong and the evidence of where maybe that's happened before. So what we need to do is to then help the brain see the evidence that disproves that thought. Do I have presented before in the past and it's been fine? I was nervous, I maybe made a couple of mistakes, but it wasn't the end of the world. Nobody laughed, everybody said, well done, I can do this. The more that we keep building that positive reinforcement for ourselves, the more we will build our resilience and enable us to step into those challenging situations. But it does take time and it does take practice. It's an intentional way of working. And if anybody's used cognitive behavior therapy or maybe had some of that before, then this comes from that. It's a tool that people use in that sense. So over to you now for you to do a little bit of work here and some individual reflection. Think about a situation that you might be finding a little bit difficult to deal with and maybe aren't responding in the way that you really would like to. Think about what that situation might be. Could be a relationship with somebody outside of work, could be a work challenge, something that's frustrating you. Consider, how might your thinking be distorted? What evidence maybe aren't you seeing, and how you could bring more balance to it? What evidence, if you were to write it all down now, confirms or disputes what you're thinking? And what might you need to be saying to yourself instead? Take a moment and just work through this for yourself. Could be somebody you're not getting on with at the moment. Could be a work project that you're really stuck on, that you can't see a way forward in. Something that is causing you a little annoyance or frustration. Have a go at it and then just give me a thumbs up when you've captured your thoughts. And if anybody wants to put in the chat, if you feel comfortable, not necessarily sharing what the challenge is, but sharing what's changed for you as you do this activity. What's shifted in your thinking? You'll be looking at this now. I remember having a challenge a few years ago where I was doing a role that actually ended up, it was a job, actually ended up not being a job that I wanted to do. And the sort of the values and the culture wasn't the sort of place where I wanted to work. But I felt that I was trapped and I felt that I couldn't get out. I couldn't, leave because I needed to pay the bills. I've got a family. I was worried that if I left this job before I'd spent more than a year in it, it would be seen as a sign of failure. I thought that, I was giving up rather than actually, just getting on with it. So I'd got all these thoughts that were happening that was, affecting my well-being and affecting how I felt and then impacting into my, my personal life too. And so actually at that time, I got some support and did some cognitive behavior therapy to help me see a different perspective and help me make and see that I'd got other choices so that I could actually move forward and get unstuck. But I hadn't been seeing it because I was stuck in the moment and I got all these thought distortions. So this is a great tool to use yourself, but also you might support others. So in the conversations that you have with people at work or at home, just asking that question, what evidence tells you that this is true? What evidence actually might tell you that this isn't true and that our very helpful brain that supports us to do so many things is not actually being as helpful as it should be here. How useful is that as a technique? Give me a thumbs up, a reaction, or put in the chat. What do you think about this as a tool, as a strategy? Have you used it before? What are your thoughts on it? I told you I was going to get you to do some work here. This is the work. Yeah, so how did I navigate my past work dilemma? So actually, I talked to one of the people in that company that I did have a good relationship with. I shared what was going on for me. They didn't realise I felt that way. And actually, they were able to help me look at some options. And I went part-time in that role and then started to do other work. And I started to build my coaching practice up while I wasn't working, and sort of almost then, rather than a hard stop and having to leave that job and nothing else to go to, I sort of had more of a softer transition that worked for all those reasons that I explained. But it started off with talking to somebody about it first, who helped me see what I wasn't seeing. Thank you for asking that. So how would you use this? Is it useful? Have people used it before? It, isn't it, where we make decisions around our goals and values, and it's difficult, isn't it, to make choice and think about what we need to do and put our well-being first. Yeah, it's useful for some types of issues. Useful just to help us thinking, isn't it? Help us thinking about we have choice. And a great example of where, this has been used in history. And if anybody's come across the writing of Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of the Holocaust during the Second World War, he talks about how, although the most awful imaginable things happened, he always had his own thoughts during this time. And that's that gave him resilience and enabled him to survive what was an awful situation. So again, as I say, this isn't, there's things here that we might have had embedded for years and years in terms of, our thought patterns, but little steps showing, what maybe we might not be seeing in the right way, looking at it through another lens might be helpful. Okay. Strategy number 2 then. Where do we focus our energy? So at times of challenge, it can feel really easy to think about and worry about everything. And this could be small challenge, it could be large challenge. And for example, a time when this in recent years, where this has impacted many people, was when we think about COVID-19 and the pandemic. That change, that uncertainty was so significant for people all around the world. And for many people, we felt like we have no control. We felt like, what can we do? And it felt overwhelming. And it felt that actually there was too much. There was too much. And where do we put our energy? And I think this was one of the biggest challenges alongside actually the physical impacts of COVID-19 was the mental health crisis that almost went alongside it. And this is adapted from the work of Stephen Covey, who some of you might come across, that has the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's quite an old book now, but it stood the test of time. And there's a lot of tools in there, and I'll share a couple with you today. But it's something that you might want to explore further if you're interested. But our circle of concern includes the wide range of concerns that we might have about a situation, or in general about work, life, health, family, politics, finances, the news. Everything inside that circle is a concern and matters to us. And then everything outside of the circle is little or no concern to us. But the challenge is when we start to realise that the things that are in our circle of concern might not be within our control. And this is what happened during the pandemic for a lot of people. They were concerned about it, but they couldn't control things. And so what Stephen suggests is that actually with a proactive focus, let's put our positive energy and place it into the areas that we can influence. And so we enlarge our circle of influence, and actually then we start to think less about the things that we can't control, and we focus on the things that we can. So I started during the pandemic. I was we've got in the UK, it's called Age UK. It's a charity that supports elderly people. And I did what they call befriending. So there was a person who was elderly that didn't have any family. And so I was connected to them as a friend during that time. And so I used to phone this person and used to check in and basically have a chat and connect. And this person was really significantly worried about all sorts of things during this time. And we actually used this approach and talked about what was in their control. So, and what was in their influence. So what was in their influence was that they could do all the things that the government was saying was important during that time. So staying at home, wearing a mask, all of the things that were recommended. And then also we started to identify the things that were happening that were outside of their control and they couldn't do anything about. So at that first point, finding a vaccine. unless you work in healthcare research, we couldn't do anything about that. But what we could do was, as soon as a vaccine was available, we could go and take it. We can go and get it. So it's minimizing our noise from the things outside of our control and focusing on the things that we can. And you can do this for all sorts of things, whether it's maybe it's a new IT system coming in where you work, that's the change. What can you control about that? What can you influence? What can you control? Maybe it's all sorts of different things, but I'd like you to think about and put in the chat, where do you think this might be usable for you or for people you know or work with? What examples could you see this being useful in, or have you used it before? Where could you use this? Let us know. Where are things that you can't control and that you could actually put in that outside the circle, and the things that you can influence? Be great to hear from you if you've got some ideas on where this might be useful. Could be around something outside of work things. It's often around those small changes that are being made that you have no say over. So let's, again, just individually, just think about where a change might be happening, or maybe where it has happened in the past that was stressful, that was concerning, that was worrying. Just write down what that might be. Yeah, thank you for putting that one in the chat. Could be used daily. Yeah, as we drive to work and the traffic's terrible. Yeah, what's outside of our control can be really stressful, can't it, if we think arriving somewhere late. But what can we do? So yeah, think for you, where's an example of something that maybe is happening at the moment or happened in the past? And then write down, in relation to that change, what can you influence? What are the things you can do? So sometimes in relation to change, there's things like, how can we be prepared in advance? How we can consider things that might go wrong? How can we make sure we're talking to the right people? How can we make sure we're informed and that we have the information we need? Sometimes that's if there's some training, how are we making sure that we're prioritizing it and going on it, because that is in our control. And then make the list of the things that you don't have control over. So with that example that's been put in the chat, with like driving to work when there's traffic or on the bus when there's traffic, actually, we can't control if there's been a road accident. We can't control if there's roadworks. We can't control if the weather's bad. But what we can control is we can leave early enough to, give us a little bit of time. We can plan our route. We can keep calm in the car by putting on that music or listening to a podcast, taking some deep breaths. Yeah. I love all these coming through. Yeah, prepping for an exam is a great one, isn't it? What can we control? How can we focus in on the things we can do? Policy changes. Yeah. Yeah, and so many things happen, don't they, by our governments and by our ruling bodies that make change that, again, unless we are in a position of political authority, we can't do, but we can discuss it. We can make the change less disruptive. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Lynn, network connectivity issues when we have a meeting online. Yep. I say technology is my biggest nemesis because I will prep for meetings like this with lovely people like you, and then all of a sudden we have a Teams issue or we have something, but that's outside of my control, and we have to let it go. So again, from doing this thinking, from sharing your thoughts on this, what's helpful to take away for you? If you were going to take one little bit of insight from this activity on control, what's the thing that you want to take away and put in place? What might that be? And again, capture it for you where you're going to remember it and read it again. But also, if you're able to, put it in the chat. Let us know what's your takeaway. What might be the action that you're putting in place here? What might you be doing differently now the next time that you have this happen? Just give you a moment to do that. Letting go sooner, yeah. And that can be hard, can't it? Yeah, being able to. I'm not going to break into song if anybody knows Frozen and Disney and Elsa and Let It Go. But, you know, there is something in saying to ourselves, isn't it? Just, yeah, time to let it go now. We have no control over this. And helping the people that we work with do this as well. It's so powerful. Yeah. Just think about your takeaway. So our third strategy, before we move on to our resilience template, is about personal effectiveness. So what does personal effectiveness really mean? You know, again, somebody might say, I need to be more personally effective. What does that actually mean? Oh, I'm just seeing some of these comments on the last bit come through. These are great about physically writing out the list. Yeah, what helps the brain actually is to physically write stuff out rather than just saying it in your head. And it almost helps us commit that. So thank you for sharing that one. Shift your energy, change your position. Yeah, there's a big thing in movement of actually shifting your energy and releasing the emotion. Thank you for sharing that one too. Yeah, the circle of concern. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. So thank you for putting those in. So yeah, personal effectiveness. Why are we talking about this? Well, actually, if we put in place strategies for personal effectiveness, it helps us to feel more in control. So what we were just talking about, we can take more control. It helps us to see situations more positively, and that directly impacts everything else. So really, some definitions here. It's getting the best out of yourself. Personal effectiveness is about how do we get the best out of ourselves. And the Chartered Management Institute say it's about making use of all the resources you have available to help you achieve work and life goals. How you manage yourself impacts your personal effectiveness. And this is where, you know, people often say, oh, you know, it's my first time being a manager. I've never done it before. You've managed yourself for years. Or maybe you haven't. But, you know, here's the thing. If we get good at using our own time, if we get good at prioritizing and planning, then we can be personally effective and we can, again, be resilient and support our well-being. Can you tell I've been talking all week? I have the pleasure of working with people and doing workshops and stuff, but also it impacts on my throat. So my well-being tactic for the weekend is not to speak to anybody all weekend. I love this little differentiator here. Being efficient and doing things right versus being effective and doing the right things. Has anybody come across that before? That saying? So people often talk about, I'm efficient, I do things right, I'm busy, I'm working through a list, I'm on the treadmill, I'm you know, I've got this, I'm doing it. But actually being effective is about doing the right things. How many of the things that we're doing are not that important or impactful, but we're still ticking them off? I know sometimes I'll write my to-do list and I'll choose the easiest and the quickest things because, do you know what, it's made my list shorter. But is that really being effective? Because what I should do if I'm being effective is choose the thing on the list that's going to have the most impact on the work I'm doing or the people on my day. So there's this real shift in actually, when you write out your list of things to do, choose the thing that's the most important. And even if you only do one thing on that list, it's the most important thing rather than the 5 things that actually wouldn't make much of a difference if you did them or not. So this is where effectiveness is a key skill to really be able to identify what are the right things. And again, Stephen Covey really covers this across the whole book in this Habits of Highly Effective People. So he talks about these habits of being proactive, starting with the end in mind. So having a goal and a focus on what you're doing, putting first things first. So doing the most important things first, thinking win-win in terms of how we work with others and our approach to conflict and to challenge, seeking first to understand, then to be understood. So that's about listening before talking, listening to others and understanding before telling, and having more of this, curious approach. Looking for synergies is habit number 6. And then habit number 7 is sharpening the saw. And this one is, it's a lovely story that goes alongside it in that the 2 people that are cutting down trees, and every morning, one of the people cutting down the trees spends 10 minutes sharpening their saw. The other person doesn't. And so what do you think happens? The person that sharpens their saw every morning cuts down more trees, whereas the person that doesn't sharpen the saw, soon they slow down, they're not effective, the number of trees they cut is much less than the other person. So this is about actually taking that time every day, but built into your habits to think about your development, think about your well-being, think about all of the stuff that isn't just the doing, think about how you are preparing yourself, supporting yourself. So a couple of tools from this book of Stephen Covey that I want to share with yourself is putting first things first. So you might have come across this before. So when you've got a list of things to do that is longer than your arm and you don't know where to start, this is a great way of categorizing them. So we want to be looking at, are they important and are they urgent? And things that are urgent and important, we do. That's top of the list. Those are the things that we have to do in this blue box on the top left. If they're not urgent, but they're important, we should plan them and we do them at the appropriate time. If something is not important, but it is urgent, are we the right person to be doing it? Or actually, is there somebody else that should be doing it? So that's where we might be able to delegate. And then the 4th one is, if it's not urgent, it's not important, should we be doing it? And that's the thing that sometimes on our list, we're filling it with the things that actually aren't going to matter, aren't going to move us. So it's a great tool that just might help you categorize all of the things that you need to do when there's lots to do. Have you come across this before? If you've used it, let us know in the chat. Just pop it in there. And then the glass jar theory one is another one that I use with coaching clients all the time, because they'll say again, I am so busy, I'm doing so much, but I don't feel like I'm moving forward on the things that are important. So this is from the concept that if we fill our working day or our working lives just with everything, and we fill it with the small things, the not so important things, the things that other people want from us, we won't have room to put in the big rocks, the big important tasks, because we've filled it with the sand and the pebbles. So when we are looking at the work that we need to do, the things that we need to achieve, it's helpful to identify first what are the big rocks, what are the most important things that are going to move us forward in relation to our work, the challenge, the relationship that we have with people. And identifying them first means that they will get done and they will get the amount of time that they need is spent on them. And then we identify what are the pebbles and then what's the sand. So again, if you're a visual speaker, if you're somebody that likes to draw things out, this can be a really useful tool that you can use or to help others with. And organisations have adopted this approach as well. And I've worked in some where, they've had their big key strategic priorities are their big rocks. They talk about them as their big rocks. It might be sustainability, it could be customer, whatever it is, they identify these, and then the objectives and the cascade through to their teams becomes really clear. Because that's the thing that we struggle with sometimes, isn't it? That there's so much that we want to do. How do we focus in and help let other people know as well what we focus in on? Okay. Have you come across the glass jar before? Is that a helpful one? Let us know and try this, and let your colleagues know too. Let people know if you find them useful. So your resilience template, this is the last thing that we're going to do together, and then we will have some time for questions or reflections if people want to come in and ask things. So your resilience template is something that you can put together to remind you of your commitment to your own health, well-being, and your ability to adapt and be flexible. And this is what it looks like. And again, this is adapted from the work of Carol Pemberton, who I shared the quote with at the very start of this workshop. But it's a great way of capturing the things that are going to support you in the long run and the habits that you might want to build into your daily routine. Because when you build it as a habit, then you're able to access that when you most need it. So it can be fluid, you can change it, you can build upon it, you can add things and take things away based upon where you are in your life. So the categories, I'm just going to run through and then I'll share you an example of mine. So the first category we have are skills. So these are the strengths that you can draw on to use in times of when things are challenging. The second one are the supports. So the things that keep you going, like friends, exercises, your faith, your spirituality. The next one is strategies. So actions you can take to help you move forward and overcome a period of difficulty. So this might be, things like moving a distraction, going for a walk, different things like that. And then the last one, which I never know whether I'm saying it the right way or not, but let's go for it. I call it sagacity. And this is things that can inspire you. Any wisdom or insights that you might hold on to. So it could be a poem, a quote, a mantra, an image. So if I share mine with you, so skills. So what I've captured here as my skills that can help me develop my resilience and keep it adaptable is positivity. So I am able to reframe my thinking to consider things in a more positive or at least a balanced way. I help others do that, and I think I'm, a pretty positive person, and I bring that when I have challenges. I'm also creative, so have that ability to think in lots of different angles to a problem. I can look at things in a different way. I love getting out post-it notes and brainstorming and trying to do that and thinking differently. So that's a skill that I've got. And also, I'm outcome focused. And I think this connects back to being in operational roles where I'm very action focused. I'm like things that are really tangible. And so I like to break down a problem into tangible steps and maybe into milestones and then have a practical approach to it. So I've captured those as skills there to remind myself that I've got these when things are challenging, are sticky and difficult. And then for my supports, so things that I can lean on when I have times when I'm feeling stressed, going for a walk, calling a friend, having that chat, and self-care. So making time for me. Every night I got into a habit for years now that I always read before I go to sleep. So I switch off all technology, I turn the light off, I've got like a Kindle, an e-reader, and just reading allows me to escape into a different world and relaxes me. That's a support that I know helps my well-being. And then some strategies to put in place that are similar to supports, but actually are more practical things will be, I have a change of scene if I'm stuck. I move away from where I am and then come back to a problem. I do the hardest thing first that I need to at the start of the day. Like I said, it's the biggest rock of my day, the most important thing, the thing that actually probably needs the most thinking time and impact with. And then also, because I'm quite motivated by rewards, as we are as humans. So, what's the thing that I'm going to reward myself with when I've done this? And it could be something like, a treat, like a bit of chocolate. I think we were talking before. Or it could be actually, do you know what? I'm because I want to spend some time with a friend. So I know that I'll do this, then I'll spend that time with a friend, and that connection is the reward. So again, it varies for everybody. And then the last one, which is around having this thing that's the wisdom, the inspiration, is that I have a photo of my children that's just behind the screen here, so you won't see it, but that's always there. And remembering that whatever happens today, a more balanced outlook helps me be my best for them. And that, when it comes to the work that I do, it is, extremely purposeful. I feel very fortunate to do it, but actually being happy and healthy for my children is the main thing that sits as the center, and that helps me get that reality shift. So I would like to invite you to write out your resilience template now. Are you up for this? Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you're up for having a go at this. Write out those titles on a page or wherever you're making your notes, and just capture for you what would go under each of those headings. Just take a minute or two to do that, and I'll just give you a little space to do that. And also, if you have any questions, then please do pop those in the Q&A, because we'll be moving shortly on to that time. It might be your skills section that might be the hardest to come up with, because often we don't recognise our strengths. So really think about what you can draw on. And this might be, what other people tell you about your strengths. What would somebody else say to you that's really strong? Yeah, that's so true. What you've just put in the chat there. Getting moving by doing some of the quick stuff versus actually then doing the hardest thing. It's balance, isn't it? As you say, with so many of these things, it's balance. Maybe you do one quick and easy thing to get you started, and then actually you go on to the harder thing. And there's some tools out there that you can use as well to help you with these. So I don't know if anybody's come across, it's like the Pomodoro technique, where you work on something for a certain amount of time and then you have a break and then you work on it again. So you can buy these like little timers. It's like a really little techie, well, it's not even techie, it's quite low tech, but it's got timing on, and you set the timer to focus in on doing your work on something, and then you stop and pause, then you do the next one. And it means that actually you're not using your phone for the timer, because you look at the time on your phone, and then you go fall into a social media hole. Before you know it, you've actually, your productivity's gone down. But these little things sometimes can help, or even egg timers is the old-fashioned way. But yeah, strengths helped you notice what you appreciate in others. Exactly, yeah. So one activity that I sometimes get people that I work with to do is to send a text message or WhatsApp to 5 people they know and say, if you needed to come to me for help, what would you ask me to support you with? And people go, oh, it's your listening, it's your ability to provide good perspective. So there's the little timer thing. It's like a Pomodoro technique timers, and there might be other ones that they're called as well. Tick time, I think this is called. But yeah, in terms of my preferences, I'm not a great detail person. So sometimes when I have to write reports, or if I have to write like a long article, or when I was studying, doing essays, I'd need to find ways to motivate myself to get into the detail. So it's knowing yourself, isn't it? Doing that. So how are you doing with your resilience template? Give me a thumbs up if you're nearly there. It's useful to see all of this, having it in one place. And what you might want to do is, so somebody's just asked, where could I buy one? I think this was off Amazon. And as much as like I try and support small businesses, sometimes Amazon helps you find things. But yeah, Google, definitely have a look for it and see, there's lots of different ones out there. So yeah, what I would encourage you to do is to, however this would be most useful for you, is create it, put it somewhere where you can see it, put it somewhere where it can support you. Yeah, repeat this as a written exercise, thinking about how you can do it. It's a great thing to do with your team as well. If you've got, if you work with colleagues, doing this together can be really supportive as well. So just as a little summary here, we've talked a lot about feelings and emotions as we go through this. Emotions are not a bad thing. Understanding our emotions in any situation can be really helpful. And I love this phrase, to name it is to tame it. So saying how we feel and then getting curious and getting interested around why is it we're feeling that way means that our emotions can inform us rather than overwhelm us. So it could be, do you know what? I've just left this conversation with somebody. I'm feeling really unsettled, uncomfortable. What might be causing that feeling? What might have happened? Where might I have been at? What are the things that are going on? So your emotions are such a powerful way of us connecting into the situations we're in, thinking about them, what resilience techniques, what strategies that we know we have might be useful, and then making sure that we don't let that, eat us up, overwhelm us, consume us, so that it doesn't impact our well-being. And after all, we are human. We have highs and lows because we're not robots. These highs and lows and these things that come, the good and the bad, will always be there. But it's about how we respond to them, how we react to them. So, in summary, it's about noticing the signs and the triggers that our well-being is being impacted, and thinking about, so what's going on with my resilience? And then looking at what's the action we can take to get back on track. And ultimately, it's about proactively taking steps to protect this in the first place. Trying not to fall over, just trying to keep us moving side by side. So, 2 questions for you now. What's shifted for you? So, what's changed after listening to this workshop today? And what are you going to focus in on? I would love as many of you as possible to just put into the chat what's changed for you and what you're going to focus on now. If you could do that, that would be wonderful. So it might be that what's changed for you is that actually you know that you're doing some great things and that you were protecting your well-being and resilience, and this has just affirmed it. And actually what you're going to focus on going forward is keep doing what you're doing. Or it might be that your understanding has changed a little and you recognise there's some areas that maybe you could hone in on a little bit more, you could focus in on. So just put into the chat what's changed for you and what you're going to focus in on. We'd love to know. And I'm sure for the team that organise these sessions as well, they want to make sure this is really useful for you, and obviously like the future webinars and workshops too. So this lets us know that actually it's been useful for you. What's changed? What are you going to focus in on? Give you a moment to capture those. Yeah, the joy in the small micro steps and the practical things. I love those. Thank you for sharing those. What else have you been working through today? What's changed for you? And just while you're doing that, at CAPE, we work with people in lots of different ways, and well-being and resilience is at the centre of most of the things that we support people with. We have open programs for people that are developing as people managers. Maybe you've been doing it for a while, maybe you're new to managing others, but we run programs twice a year that you can join to help you build the confidence and impact and effectiveness as managers. We work with teams, so we do group coaching from leadership teams down to individual, new and growing teams. And we also do one-to-one coaching programs that can be for all of these elements, such as career transitions, building confidence, leading through change. I would love you to all connect with me on LinkedIn because we share loads of resources for free on there. We run webinars from time to time as well. And I'll also invite you to like our CAPE page where we share lots of resources there too as well. So thank you for putting all of those comments and actions through in the chat. There's some great stuff there coming through. Take the time to read them, what everybody's putting in, because that is fantastic. Thank you so much. So we have some time now for some questions, and either people can put them in the Q&A or you can raise your virtual hand and Lynn will invite you in to ask a question or to share a reflection, just to say how you're doing. Over to you, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Wow, it has been a real and engaging session. As I continue to share, I would encourage people to also give their takeaway from today's session. And any feedback you might have, any questions or questions you need to ask Lindsay, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. So thank you very much for today's session. First of all, for giving us an example of how you've been resilient. Maybe you didn't notice it, but you told us you have been having other engagements during the week, and you also had this one, and you still showed up despite the issues you had with your throat, you are still able to speak to the end of the session. So we appreciate you very much. My takeaway for today is the picture you shared, the reservoir of well-being. We usually hear that you cannot work or give from an empty cup. So thank you for showing us how that there are things that we need to refresh ourselves with so that we can give better, we can have a better output, and that it is not going to be perfect every day. And that even though you planned for something and maybe the internet will be good, maybe the people that you need to work with will be available when you need them. Sometimes things can get out of hand, and we are reminded that when things are out of our control, there are tools and techniques we can use so that you can be able to manage those situations. We are going to experience stress, but it is not about how the stress only, it's about how you will manage the stress that comes your way. Yes, so thank you very much. If there are any other comments or questions, I'll read them. I see that people are really appreciating you for the session that you have carried out for us today. Yeah.
Oh, thank
So
you for all those comments. That is
yeah,
wonderful. And this is what matters, isn't it, in these sessions?
yeah.
It's about sharing our experiences and helping you have some practical tools and just that bit of time to think. I love your reflections there, Lynn, as well. And this is it, isn't it? We need to give each other the time to think about these things. Yeah.
Yes, thank you also for including the reflections within the session so that people get engaged and also feel that they're included in the conversation. Yes,
So
so
important.
if there's anyone who would like to raise their hand to give their comment, feedback, question, you can raise your hand and I'll be able to allow you to speak.
Reading through all the
Yeah.
comments as well. They're wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody.
Yes, maybe I'll read also the comments that we have received from Sanet Kruger. They say, for me, safeguarding your wellness and to be self-aware is their takeaway from this session. Karian Carl says, brilliant presentation. Thank you, Lindsay. Christy Lee says, also thinking about personal efficiency when doing things. Yes, we have been told about doing the right things and doing things rightly. I hope that even after the session, you'll continue to ponder on these things and go ahead and reflect on the things that you have been working on, things that you have learned for the first time, things that you're going to implement from today going forward. Oh, yes, I see we have a hand raised from Dr. Gebeyehu. You can go ahead and unmute your mic. Hello, can you hear us? Okay. Uh, I see there are more comments just thanking you for today's session.
Oh, wonderful. That was great. Yeah, please do. Anybody feel free to connect on LinkedIn. And if you want to be added to our mailing list, again, connect on LinkedIn because I won't be able to get your email addresses through this. So just send me a message on LinkedIn. We'll add you to our newsletter and we'd love to keep in touch with you as well. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay. Is there
Will you,
anything else? Yes,
I
sorry.
was just going to say, Lynn, will you be sharing the slides and the present and the recording with everybody after?
Yes, we can make arrangements to share the slides and the recording.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, fantastic.
All right. I would like to say thank you to everyone for your enthusiasm, participation, and your great questions and also your feedback. A special shout out to Lindsay for sharing her wisdom. expertise, and practical insights with us today. We hope this session has left you feeling inspired and equipped with actionable strategies to enhance your stress management and resilience building activities. I have shared your link on the chat box, Lindsay, but I can share it again for those who might not have seen it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and hope you have a wonderful weekend, whatever you're doing. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.